We are back with another mock draft Monday. Last week, Matt broke down the draft where I drafted from the 2 spot, and we had some fun conversations. This week, the tables have turned where Matt has drafted from the 7 spot, and I get to break down his draft on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source of fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominic Martino. You can find me on Twitter at DomMartinoFB. Here, as always, with my brother, my co-host, my partner in crime, Matthew Ane, and you can find him on Twitter at Matthew_Ane. If you're watching on YouTube and you haven't already, hit that little bell below. It will subscribe you to the channel and give you a notification every time we drop a new episode. Or if you're listening on a platform like Apple or Spotify that allows 5-star ratings and reviews, we would truly, truly appreciate it if you could do that for us as well. And guys, what's truly most important to us and you guys this time of year, give us a chance on the Subtext platform. Through Subtext, it's an in-depth, personalized experience. Through text messaging alerts going right to your phone, offering so much more than we can in this 30-minute episode. And guess what? Our 2025 rankings have been fully retuned. Matt and I have been putting in the work and effort for you guys and getting those rankings, like as near as perfect as they're going to be this time of year, and you're getting those on Subtext. Link is in bio wherever you're listening or watching. And guys, got to talk to my friends at FanDuel quick. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Win or lose, visit FanDuel.com to get started today. And all right, Matt, I'm honestly just passing it off to you here, brother. You know what? You're on the.
I'm in the hot seat. You looking at
You're in the hot seat. You're in the hot seat, and he knows it already. So you know what, Matt? Go ahead, my brother.
All right. So I'm gonna preface this just like what the league is like for the mock draft, like format and position eligibility. And I'll break it down. So essentially, it's a 5x5 head-to-head categories league. So that's runs, home runs, ribs, stolen bases, average, wins, saves, Ks, ERA, WHIP. Right. Head-to-head. So. Boom. And I drafted out of the 7-hole, and it was an interesting one. So I'm going to read off my draft, and then I'm going to give some takeaways and then kind of like my draft strategy. So first round, I went Kyle Tucker, pick 7, was super happy, fell to me there. Then Yordan Alvarez, Austin Riley, Blake Snell, James Wood, Yoshinobu, Yamamoto, Jordan Westberg, Johan Duran, Tristan Casas, Shane McClanahan, Kodai Senga, Nico Horner, Ben Joyce, Pete Crow-Armstrong, Josh Young, Brandon Woodruff, Josh Lowe, Shane Boz, Christian Encarnacion-Strand, Spencer Arrighetti, the Yeti himself, Jeffrey Springs, Jesus Luzardo, and then finishing off with Austin Wells. And then behind us, I am now going to put up the draft board so now you can kind of see it throughout the whole episode. So it's a little bit more of a perspective for you. You can see everything up on if you're watching on YouTube. So my draft philosophy going into the draft was essentially, let me grab not only the best player available, but maybe focus on more on the positional scarcities, right? So that's why I smacked Kyle Tucker, then Yordan Alvarez. Alvarez fell to me, and I love Alvarez at this spot. You look at where I have him in my rankings at outfielder, and he's in my top 10, obviously. Alvarez is sitting at 6, so I pretty much got my number 2 and my number 6 outfielder right off the bat. I'm super happy. And then, for me to come in and then go ahead and scoop up, Austin Riley, my third baseman. Yes. And I was like, sweet, I'm chilling right now in terms of like tier based, right? I got all tier 1, like 2 tier 1, outfielders essentially. And then tier 2 third baseman. I'm chilling going into the draft so far. And then you look at, my next pick, and I'm like, wow, I get Blake Snell, who I have ranked 6th overall at the position, 5th actually. And I'm like, sweet, I'm killing it in terms of my perspective. Then you roll in, and then you're like, okay, well, I want some upside, but also a guy I'm super high on. If you listen to the My Guy Must Draft Hitters episode, you know how I feel about James Wood. Scooped up James Wood. Boom. I literally just got my outfielders nice and early, and if you're not aware, if you haven't done mock drafts yet, and this is the first dip into your toes into the pool of mock drafts, outfield talent kind of drops off really quickly. So I grabbed them early and I prioritized that. And, it definitely left some holes, and I'm going to get into that in terms of like my takeaways at the end of this. But, I have a strong outfield going into this, and I feel great about it. And then, you look at it and you go, all right, let me go and get my second one. And I saw my number 6 overall pitcher, Yoshinobu Yamamoto. And I'm like, bet, like, I'm chilling. Now let me focus on my infield. And then I scooped up Jordan Westberg, who has second and third eligibility. And who could beat that? The kid had a great season last year. He was also on the must draft hitter episode. And I'm a big fan of him as well. And I'm like, great. I'm getting all my guys right now, essentially. And then you got to go in, and I feel it's time I needed to dip my toes into getting a relief pitcher, and I got Johan Duran, and I have him ranked as my, I finally finished my closer rankings as my number 9, and that's pretty much where he's going in terms of, ADP. So I'm pretty much right on par with that, and I'm pretty happy about that. Then I'm like, okay, I need a little upside, and also too, Vinny Pasquantino already went, which I was hoping was going to fall later, but it just didn't work out. I think ADP is pretty much catching up to Vinny P. And, I wound up with Tristan Casas, which also isn't a bad replacement at all. Some people and a lot of people in a lot of circles have Tristan Casas ahead of Vinny Pasquantino. And the upside is there. And plus, the team is definitely making improvements itself. So I see the upside and I think, boom, like I'm pretty much nailing it. I got a balance of, stolen bases at this point and a lot of power. And I feel like I'm definitely going to rival anybody in the league at this point with this team in terms of my bats. And then you keep going and you just look at like, just based off of team construction. I went for Shane McClanahan and Kodai Senga because I double tapped on that, and I'm like, the value is absolutely redonkulous right now. You look at what I did, right? I got these bats right now. Let me read them off again: Kyle Tucker, Yordan Alvarez, James Wood, Jordan Westberg, Tristan Casas, and Austin Riley as well. And I've cleared out most of my starting hitters. All that's left is short and catcher, and then my UTs. But now I just scooped up 2 guys coming off injuries, and that were also top 10 pick, would have been top 10 picks last year if it wasn't for the fact that they were hurt. So boom, I just scooped up 2 guys as my pitcher 3 and 4. The value is absolutely ridiculous. I scooped them up in literally round 10 and 11. That's just bonkers. And then I started realizing, shortstop really needs to be picked up. So I went and grabbed Nico Horner. So boom, another stolen base guy. Guy's going to at least get you 30 stolen bases. Maybe not do it in the power realm, but definitely going to contribute in the runs and stolen base and not kill me in average. I felt it was a great compliment to the team and a way to round out my infield. And, also too, I'm going to get to my takeaways in a little bit, but I'll circle back to that. Then I just scooped up my second closer and Ben Joyce, who I think, is going to have a lot of opportunities because if the Angels win, they're going to win in close games, which means there's going to be a lot of opportunities to go out there and get saves. That felt was great. And then I'm like, okay, time to get my UTs. Crow-Armstrong and Josh Young. I love Pete Crow. I haven't ranked in my top 25 at the position, if I'm not mistaken. Crow-Armstrong is actually sitting at 18 for me, so even my top 20.
Sheesh.
Yeah, man. I'm a fan. Like, and to get him here, I think is a real steal. Like, look, he has 30 stolen base upside with at least 20 to 25 home run power. I feel the team has gotten better, especially with adding Kyle Tucker on there. Now I have the pair as well. So the runs and ribs, I feel, are going to be limitless with the 2. And I think Armstrong might actually, lead off in front of Kyle Tucker, which also is going to give him that real big boost in terms of the runs. And it's just going to be really nice. The Cubs are actually going to be a force this year. And then I followed up with Josh Lowe on a little bit of an upside play. He didn't really live up to the expectation, but he was hurt a lot last year. And I feel like that upside still might be there. So I was like, screw it, let me take a shot. And then, you keep moving and grooving. And you look and you go, all right. I'm sorry. I got that confused there. Then I got Josh Young. I think I got my drafts all mixed up on me, actually. But anyway, Josh Young of the Texas Rangers, and he was another steal. I'm a big fan. And then Christian Encarnacion-Strand. Like, honestly, my bats are well-rounded. I got power sitting on the bench. I got a lot of upside plays. And I could always stream a UT at the end of the day. Finished out my pitching with Spencer Arrighetti, Jesus Luzardo, and Jeffrey Springs, all upside plays, but I'm confident in Arrighetti. Luzardo on the Phillies, I think, is going to be awesome. And then Jeffrey Springs, another upside play. I could replace most of these guys through waivers and streaming if I really needed to, but the bats is something that's a core and that it's going to be harder to replace than an arm at the end of the day. It's very hard to stream bats in a 5x5. But anyway, let's now just my takeaways from this draft before I hand it off and we go to break. Shortstop goes really early. Like, I've done a couple mocks, and if I didn't get a shortstop by the fifth round, which that's where O'Neal Cruz is going, and that's pretty much the last of Mohicans for me in terms of elite at the position, it's gone. You're done. So I just was like, okay, if you want a strong short, you're gonna have to just go early. That's why the Bobby Witt pick in the early rounds actually might be the most valuable. Still gives you positional eligibility to go and draft outfielders and still keep the depth and still have a strong core at short. I feel like that in itself, there's a lot of talent. It's just top end. So if you want a good shortstop in this draft this year, you're gonna have to draft him early. Me, I decided to go against it. And when everybody's bobbing, you weave, you end up with a better team. But all right, coming up next, Dom and I are going to be discussing, what Dom's feelings about my team is, all the positives, and then he's going to rip me apart in the third half. So you want to see where he stands in that coming up next. Okay, from big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $250 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $250 in bonus bets if win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for your live bets, same games, parlays, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200, $250 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make every playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And guys, look, we need to play some bets. And I think, you know what, today, since we're listening, we gotta put a bet in for tonight, right? It's FanDuel. Let's do it, right? Yeah, you got the Vikings, you got the Rams playing tonight, and the best way to do it is, go against the tide. Like same thing I'm saying with the draft. It's Bob when everybody's weaving, and I'm going I'm going to take the Rams on that money line. I'm also going to bet on Kyron Williams getting a touchdown, anytime touchdown, and I'm also going to bet on him getting at least the over on his yards. Yes, the defense is good for Vikings, but Kyron Williams is just so strong. It's just going to be fun. And then I'm totally going to take the over on Puka Nacua for the reception totals. So I'm going to take the over on that. So quite honestly, you could probably place that parlay, take some money home, make that $5 count, and then also get that $250 of bonus bets guaranteed. And that's FanDuel.com. Make every moment more with FanDuel. Introducing the Locked On Fantasy Baseball Podcast, Diamond Club on Subtext, your ultimate fantasy baseball companion. Now, look, I'm going to say something. You can't win your drafted league, but you definitely can lose it. And the way you avoid that is joining the Subtext. You want our rankings, you're listening to the show, you want to get behind the scenes and exactly what I'm looking at when I'm making my picks here, join the Subtext. Minimal cost. And on top of that, you're going to get access to us directly. You're going to be able to ask us questions. Plus, you're going to get our extended list of sleepers, breakout busts, values, and more just by joining the Subtext. Links in the description below. Now, Dom, before you bend me over and make me feel like I'm stuck at fantasy baseball, tell me what you like about my team. And then we can get into the negatives after the fact.
So you want me to talk sweet to you? Is what you're saying? You want to hear some sweet things first? All right.
Just fluff me before you rip me, okay?
I got you. We could definitely do that because you know what, Matt, this is actually a pretty solid team, and I do like it. Let's start off with what I like the most, and I think you covered this pretty well. But I think we have to really make sure that all of our listeners understand that outfield, getting a strong outfield is so important when you're playing in like any 12-man league or deeper. You need to get those outfielders early, and Matt, you nailed it. I love Kyle Tucker. I also have him ranked as my number 2 outfielder going into the year. I have Yordan outfielder ranked as my number 5 outfielder going into the season, so I love the double tap there. That was very, very wise, very, very smart. Then you go out and grab Austin Riley. I did that in my draft last week as well. So I think Austin Riley in the 3rd round is going to be like a really, really sweet spot. And people don't think, and it wasn't that long ago, but people forget that Austin Riley had 3 straight seasons of just pure consistency. He was hurt last year. I think we give him the benefit of the doubt. He's still fairly young. So that's a great take right there. I love the combination of Snell and Yamamoto. I have Snell ranked as my number 5 starting pitcher and Yamamoto as my 8, so that's a strong one too. James Wood has all the upside in the world and as a number 3 outfielder, amazing. As we go through the rest of this, you talked about Westberg. We talked about him a lot recently on the Breakout episode. He's going to have a great, strong season there in Baltimore. Love him there at 2nd. See, this is where I'm not going to spoil too much. I like Duran. I do have him ranked fairly high. It's definitely a good jump in there. Don't know if I would have grabbed him exactly, but still like Duran. I actually think I have him ranked higher than you. Closer, to be honest. I think I'm ranked at 7 now that I'm looking. Do love the pick. Just, I think there was one or two guys I might have had a little bit higher, but that's just preference. So can't really hate too much there, right? Tristan Casas, you were talking about him versus Vinny Pasquantino. I have Pasquantino 6, Casas 7. So that's literally just, like you said, kind of preference at that point. And Matt, as you know, I preference Vinny P there too. Shout out to the Pasquatch. I think he's going to have a huge bounce back season, but Casas going to be great as well. McClanahan, Senga. We are going to talk about this later, so I'm going to skip, and we are going to keep moving here. Nico Horner, I love me some Nico Horner. I had him like all my leagues last year. I drafted him, I think, in my mock draft last week too. In round 12 to get a guy that can hit 300, 100 runs, and steal you 30, 40 bags. I think he's being very, very severely undervalued. Ben Joyce, great pick. You broke him down very well. I have him as ranked as my 15th closer this year. PCA, somebody we might talk about a little bit more later. Matt, I know you're a huge PCA guy. You got him ranked at 18. You said I'm a little bit lower on him. It's not a bad pick, just probably not who I would have snagged there. Josh Young, I took him last week. Not going to really get into him. I think that's a great pick. We're talking about him in round 15, 30 homers, 100 RBIs, good batting average. Fantastic. Brandon Woodruff. This is going to be the pick that makes or breaks this rotation here, I think. If Brandon Woodruff could be Brandon Woodruff, I think this is one of the best picks of the draft because the value is just so great on him right now. But once again, we'll talk more about the rotation a little bit in a second. Josh Lowe, this is another one. Matt, you're just nailing these picks here with the upside, right? Because if Josh Lowe can be, where are we drafting him at last year? Top 20 outfielder, I believe, if not top 25-ish in that range. So getting him here as your fourth outfielder is absolutely amazing. Just makes the depth of that outfield so strong. Shane Baz, once again, we'll talk about the rotation a little bit later. I'm a huge Shane Baz guy. I have him ranked, I think, in my top 35 starters, so I do like him a lot. We'll preface that there. Christian Encarnacion-Strand, I still don't understand. He's playing. He played in the Arizona Fall League. He's healthy right now. I guess it still is the injury, maybe still too many mouths to feed over there, but I think they have to get Strand in that lineup, so the value here is amazing. Then you went Arrighetti, Springs, and Luzardo. I will say this, I love that you did this here just to say, you know what, I know my rotation's been a little bit risky. Let me just get 3 more arms here that I can just throw in there with the top, and it will work out pretty well. And then Austin Wells, I think I've talked about him crazy amount this offseason. Just one of my favorite catchers, and the fact that you got him in the last round is absolutely amazing. I actually have Austin Wells ranked as my number 12 catcher. So fantastic job there, Matt. But before we get into, a little bit of a breakdown here, we are going to take a quick break and then jump right back into it. But make sure you stay tuned because we're going to have some fun in this next segment.
Yeah, not my favorite part.
So, Matt, anything else to say before I jump in here and we start going at it a little bit?
Yeah. So, one thing I will say is, this is first lick. Also, too, we're going to say this, this is not going to be a team that's going to be attainable in about a couple weeks once draft season really kicks. But, you're running against NFBC ADP, and, these are a lot more draft and holds kind of type deal. But, honestly, I feel like I did a good job. And you look at it, you look at my rotation. Yeah, it may be a little bit risky, but at the same time, you look at it and you go, well, if they all hit, and if they don't, you can stream pitchers all day long. I could play the stream game better than anybody at this point. So if these guys do hit, I don't hit, I can make up for it. I'm just going to struggle to the playoffs. But then once I make the playoffs, which I will, that's where it's going to be anybody's game. And it don't matter. All I got to do is stream right all week, and I will beat somebody. So it's just about manufacturing. You could do this, and this is the right year to do it because the value on these guys are just ridiculous. Now, Dom, get into it. Rip me apart. Make me feel like I'm terrible.
So I will say this, though, too. Matt and I have been doing this for a long time. So, it is a little bit easier for us to draft a rotation like this and then maintain it. But I think for the average, guy out there who's, not putting in all the hours, who just wants to get a little bit of knowledge, this rotation, the thing is, there's a scenario where I think a month or a month and a half into the season that the only man standing could be Blake Snell, and he could be pitching horrible. And then, as good as you can stream and pick up off the waiver wire, we only have so many IL spots in most league. And it was just going to be hard where, you go, love the first two. The first two are good. And then even Yamamoto does have a little bit of question. He dealt with injuries last year, especially down the stretch. So he does have a little bit of questions himself. But then you look at McClanahan as the 3 and Senga as the 4. McClanahan's supposed to be healthy. Senga, I think so as well, but he dealt with a plethora of injuries, and then when he came back, couldn't stay healthy and looked a little bit off. So it's just as the 3-4, you don't have a huge amount of stability. And then as you keep going, we talked about Woodruff a little bit earlier, just a huge upside, risk reward. Boz has yet to give us anything more than like a little over 100 innings. Arrighetti, I love the Arrighetti pick. I just think he's somebody who we're forgetting how good he was down the stretch last year. I'm not even going to say anything about that one because I think he's going to be really good this year. Not really too much injury question on him. Springs is another one, and he's new team first year, does go over to the Athletics, but they're not playing in Oakland anymore. So it's not the pitcher-friendly park. So that one's going to be tough for him. Luzardo, let's see where he's at. We haven't seen a pitch in a long time. We'll want to see what he looks like in spring training. But as your last pitcher, I think that's such a good pick. I can't even say anything bad. But once again, there's a world where this rotation winds up really banged up, and it could just be Arrighetti and Snell pitching for their lives while everybody's sitting on the IL, and you're really going to be scrambling. And then as we talk about, the pitching, I think I always like to go 3 closers. It's tough when you have a limited roster. You kind of got to pick and choose your battles here. Think you'll struggle a little bit in saves, when it comes to the teams like, the Twins and Angels. Angels especially aren't really going to win too many games. The Twins, a different story. Probably will get a good amount of saves with Duran, but another pitcher has dealt with injury. Didn't take that step forward we wanted him to take last year. Maybe he does it this year. I do like Duran, so not really talking too much about him, but maybe a little bit more stable closer, as like a 3 or a 2, or just even adding a third to build a little bit more stability with the closers. Would have maybe taken that route. PCA. I do like him. I like him not as much as you. Might have went a different direction there as far as who I took, but I do like the 4 outfielders, so I'm not too mad at you there. One thing I did want to mention, and I'm glad I didn't forget this. What could have made this rotation for me almost immaculate? You switch Senga out with Joe Ryan, who went 1 round later. And I'm just a big Joe Ryan guy. I have Joe Ryan in my top 20 starters. So the fact that you would have been able to grab a Joe Ryan, who we know who he is at this point, I do think there is another level. Maybe it's just me. I know I heard Nick Pollock of Pitcher List talking about he's a big Joe Ryan guy as well. And shout out to Nick Pollock, one of the best in the industry at what he does over there at Pitcher List. So, but yeah, I'm a big Joe Ryan guy. I think that would have been made your rotation a little bit more stable. When it comes to the bats, though, like I said, besides PCA, Matt, this is really perfect. I'm going to give the love where it's due. I got to give it to you, brother. As much as I talked a little bit of smack there, love the hitting here. Probably couldn't have done it better myself. You got guys that I like and I took last week, even a little bit later. You talked about how we might not be able to do this in a few weeks, but hey, let's capitalize on what we have now. We can only deal with what we have in front of us, right? That's what we got to do here, and you did a great job of it. I don't really have too much else to add here. I don't know if you want to hop back in and say anything else, and then maybe we'll go back and forth on a couple of guys.
Yeah, I mean, so your argument for like Joe Ryan versus Kodai Senga, I mean, Joe Ryan got injured and went on the IL at the end of the season too, and he's never been a pitcher of health either. So I mean, there's also he puts just as much risk into the scenario as anybody else. It's just a matter of who's going to go down first. And Joe Ryan, I just feel like if I'm taking an upside play and I'm going to have an injury risk regardless, Kodai Senga has SP1 upside, whereas Joe Ryan has a solid SP2. So like if you're going to go after the upside on that with an injury guy, it's Senga at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, besides last year, Joe Ryan's been pretty healthy, and then even Senga coming over, he's a little bit older, and the way he throws his pitches too, especially the pitches that he throws, like the ghost fork and stuff like that, putting a lot of stress on the arm. And then like I said, when he did come back, just wasn't there. I know Joe Ryan finished up the year healthy, if I remember correctly, and
he sat on the IL.
He finished on the IL.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I guess he didn't make it back in time, but I know he was at least working his way back, and I just feel he's a more stable arm. And I'm going to disagree on the upside. I think their upside's similar. I like Joe Ryan a little bit more this year. I have Joe Ryan. I think is my SP 18. I have Joe Ryan at 18, and I have Senga actually a bit down further. I've been moving Senga down actually. I got Senga down to 41. So I think there's a big gap there. That in my opinion.
And just to bring up what his injury was to Joe Ryan, it's a what do you call it? A right-handing call it a right shoulder teres grade 2 teres major strain, which is
the same one that Verlander had. Yeah,
Verlander, Nestor, Rodon, McKenzie, Like,
Yeah,
and
a
you
few
saw
of them had that.
and you saw how long it took for any of them to kind of come back from that, and he got it at the end of the season. So what that tells you is he's probably not even going to start off the season right. I'm also now going to drop him down in the rankings now that we're really reviewing things. But I think Senga, at least, yes, he was coming back from a big injury, looked great in his first outing. They came back during the season as a starter, then just couldn't. They had to get shut down again because of the inflammation. Was able to pitch through the playoffs, didn't look sharp at all, but at the same time, the fact that he was able to pitch, they managed him correctly. Now having a full offseason, I think he returns to glory and returns fine unless there's an injury that pops up mid-season. Luckily, this is not a real team. But if I were to start the season today, he pitched a whole spring training, and he's looking good with no injuries. Yeah, I'm all about this. I think Senga is probably the ace in the hole over anybody else on that rotation that has the least amount of question marks. At least he pitched last year versus the McClanahan, the Woodruffs, and then even Boz for that instance. He pitched at the end and looked fantastic. So I look at it like this. I took a lot of upside, but also too, I feel like between the Kodai Sengas and Boz, they already showed that they were actually able to get out on that mound where the other two haven't yet. So if anything, they're the least risky out of McClanahan and Woodruff.
Yeah, I hear you. It's just, even if it's not Joe Ryan, right? We could agree to disagree on Joe Ryan, and I do like the fact that I did forget definitely about the shoulder injury there with Ryan. Definitely got to deep dive into there and see where he's at in his thing. But whether it's Ryan or somebody else, there was a couple other guys there too. That you could have just went with somebody a little bit more stable, right? I don't want to keep going on about Senga. I don't think he's somebody that I'm going to be targeting a lot this year, but I do love the McClanahans, the Woodruffs, even the Luzardo as the last pick is a good one there to, at least you have enough guys there with very high upside. And then even on the flip side, I said there's a world where all of these guys are hurt. There's a world where this rotation is one of the best in the league, and you have 6 top 30 starting pitchers in this rotation between where if things work out for Springs and he goes back to that Cy Young form that he had before he got hurt. Same thing for Luzardo. Brandon Woodruff is top 10 arm when he's healthy. Same thing with McClanahan, who has top 5 upside. So there is a world where this rotation rocks and rolls and is one of the best in the league, and then there's just the other side of it where most of these guys can wind up hurt. And like I said, whoever the stabilizer may have been, that you could have thrown in there, whether you even went up a round early and you skip the McClanahan and you get one more guy there that's a little bit stabler, and then you take all the risky guys a little bit later on. I think there's just a route where this rotation's a little bit more stable, and this team goes from after draft day being like, let's say, the 5th or 6th best to being legitimately the best team in the league.
Yeah, I mean, there is a way I could have did this too. Like if I look at who went after what do we call it? After those two, after I made my Blake Snell pick, I'm trying to look for. Here we go. I picked him in the 4th round, and then if I didn't go James Wood and I went like Aaron Nola as my second, and then if I could have, or I just would have went instead of Aaron Nola, a Gallon or a DeGrom, but even DeGrom is still just as risky. A Logan Webb or a Tanner Bybee or even a Imanaga.
A Logan Webb or a Bybee for sure. And I'm big on Bybee coming into this year.
Would have made it a little bit better, or I could have even, I could have went back even another round, and I could have picked a pitcher where I picked Austin Riley, but then I was looking at like a Cole Reagans.
I think the move this year, and I think the last few years, is definitely 3 bats in the 12-man league.
Yeah,
definitely got to do 3 bats first, because there's so much depth at that point when you're looking at your first 2 starting pitchers. As long as you go back to back there, it's not a huge matter of who you take. Unless you're going with 2 bad injury guys, I'm happy with any 2 starting pitchers at that point for the most part. Just the pitchers that you're getting there right now are very, very high end.
Yeah, I mean, it's splitting hairs at a certain point too. Like you got to really just figure out, okay, who are my guys? Like if the other guy was considering it was Blake Snell or Cole Reagans, and like I pretty much just stayed true to my rankings. Cole Reagans, I think, is a little bit more on the safer one. We've seen him be healthy for 2 seasons in a row. You swap out Blake Snell for Cole Reagans. You have Yamamoto, and like I could see where you feel a little bit more comfortable. But I also could have swapped out the top 2, but also too, then I would have had a lot less upside. Like Blake Snell is going to finish with, if he pitches a full season and starts right off the bat, you're talking a 200 plus strikeouts along with Yamamoto. It's going to be very tough to beat that tandem. But again, maybe I do that when I go with a risky, 3, 4, 5. that's probably where you do it, because the value on these guys at the end of the day, you look at where these guys went and what rounds I got these guys. If you have good stabilizers, which probably would have made this lineup better as I'm looking, and hindsight is 2020. It would have been safer, and I probably wouldn't have had this low floor, high ceiling kind of type play. I would have had a stabilizer, a Cole Reagans, and I'm looking just at where I picked guys, right? Cole Reagans, and let's just say I would have either had, an Aaronola. If I would have went Cole Reagans, Aaronola, that would have been a lot better of a 1-2 punch in terms of stabilization for this rotation. Do you agree?
I like that. I like the Reagans Nola. I definitely think that, because we know Nola. We definitely know. Sometimes you get the high ERA with him, but we know high strikeouts, stability. You're not really questioning. You're throwing an Aaron Nola out there every 5 days. Reagans too. I feel like Reagans is like that newer version of maybe like a Corbin Burns that we saw a few years ago, where he's going to be, I think he's going to be really good for like next 2 or 3 years. Then he's going to start to like tamper off a little bit, maybe like Burns does as well. So I think Reagans, we have at least another 2 years of him just being absolutely dominant, and, hopefully he doesn't get hurt, but I don't think he's a guy that, he's a bigger guy, bigger frame, that I don't think we have to worry too much about injury when it comes to Reagans. So I could see that. I could see that being more stable with the rest of the guys that you have here for sure.
Yeah, so maybe that's the approach if you're going to go this route. It's all about a learning process and different strategies. But guys, please,
and this is still early in mock draft season, guys. We're getting our first mocks into, and right here as you guys are doing it, so you're learning with us.
Yep, guys. So if you have any comments on my opinion on my draft, please put in the comments below. Or if you're not watching on YouTube and you only listen on the audio, leave us a review and just say what you would have done in the review. But guys, please like, subscribe, comment, rate, review, do everything you can to share this podcast. You're only as good as the knowledge you share with your friends, because then you're better than them if you're starting off at the same point. And when you're done, check out our boy Still over Locked On MLB. Gives great baseball coverage. But guys, have a great rest of your day. Peace out.